welcome to my couch. Please grab a seat or a pillow or a pet because I want to chat today about something pretty personal and very important to me. That is women, veterans, and mental health. Why do women vets, people like me, need more attention when it comes to mental health and specific attention than what other vets would get? I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran, and this is a topic that's been on my mind for a while. I've been wanting to make this video, and in doing some research for it, I found some pretty disturbing facts. And I want to talk about like the good, the bad, the ugly, just my personal mental health journey after military service. I'll try to be funny. It's a pretty serious topic, but that is the coping mechanism for me. Just think of this as a heart-to-heart chat with your veteran friend. If you're not a veteran yourself, or you're just not a veteran who can relate to any of these struggles, then at least you'll understand why women veterans' mental health deserves a lot more of the spotlight and how you can help shine that light. So first, a little more about me. I signed up for the Air Force in my late teens. Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to serve my country and, travel the world is what I wanted to do more than anything. Go to college, all of that stuff. By the way, I did get to see a lot of the world. I was stationed in England, got to see the majority of Europe. I had a pretty nice experience. One of the first things I learned, though, was how to make a perfect military bun. I feel like it caused my hair to thin from having to pull it back so many times. And, I'm trying to fix that now. But so that was one thing. And then how often I felt like I was constantly surrounded by men, right? Young men at the time. And how much harder I felt like I needed to work to prove myself. There were times I'd be the only woman on a team, and I would just be so nervous about screwing something up. I just felt a lot of pressure. I felt like I was representing all women in the military. No one said that I was, but it just felt that way to me at the time. And so mental health back then wasn't even on my radar. Woke up early, did my job under stress, practiced a lot, did a lot of exercises. I deployed 3 times. Duty called and you would just suck it up and go with it. So if you were ever struggling, you certainly didn't broadcast it. I was intelligence for the Air Force, so holding on and protecting that top secret clearance was the most important thing in the world for a lot of us. We needed it to do our jobs, and we always felt like there was this unspoken secret that if you were not well mentally, you could lose your clearance and jeopardize your entire career. So you would just pretend like everything was fine, right? And of course, being so young back then, being so innocent, looking back, I realized that I was stockpiling a lot of stress. Fast forward to when I finished my service and returned to civilian life. I got out in summer of 2013. I quickly discovered that the world isn't exactly sure what to do with us women vets. On one of my first visits to the VA, I was sitting down in the waiting room, and this older gentleman looked at me, smiled, and asked, "Hey, are you here with your husband, hon?" My smile back was equally polite as I answered, "No, sir, I am the veteran." Just me. So I just remember he looked a little surprised. I mean, he was much older, so times have changed, and I get that. This kind of thing happens a lot. Women veterans are frequently mistaken for spouses or caregivers rather than recognized as vets ourselves. It's like people haven't caught up with the fact that, yes, women serve in the military, and not just as nurses in World War II movies, but we're actually out there There are a lot more women now probably than back when I was in, breaking barriers and still feeling invisible in plain sight. On Veterans Day, I've had people at events hand me the military wife ribbon instead of the veteran ribbon. And, just little things like that just kind of remind you of where we're at mentally. And it's not about the ribbon itself, of course, but what it actually represents, an assumption that veteran equals male, not female. When society forgets that women vets exist, it also forgets that we might need help, right? And that these cries for help are very unique. Our struggles can fly under the radar. How do you get support when people don't even know you're there, right? And so that's one big reason I'm speaking up, to kind of put a spotlight on the unseen experiences of women veterans like me. All right, so let's dig into why this issue is so urgent. So recently, the VA released data showing the suicide rate among women veterans jumping 24.1% between 2020 and 2021. That means that a 24% spike happened in 1 year. To put that into perspective, the increase for male veterans was about 6% in that same time period, and around 2.6% for civilian women. 2.6, 24, that's a huge gap, and it's terrifying. It's like watching a fire spread exponentially. Like it's too much. And this isn't just a stat, it actually translates to lives lost. A lot of female veterans have felt that that's their only option. I've lost a friend to suicide, and I can't even describe the mix of grief and anger I felt knowing that it keeps happening to women like her at such alarming rates. Here's another scary fact. Women veterans actually experience PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, at more than double the rate of male veterans. According to the VA, about 13% of female vets have been diagnosed with PTSD compared to 6%, which is what is for male vets. We're talking more than twice as likely. Part of that reason is linked to military sexual trauma. Military sexual trauma is abbreviated as MST. It's got its own abbreviation because it happens so much, and it's basically just a polite way of saying sexual harassment or assault during your service. It also happens to men, by the way, but this is sadly far too common for females in our ranks. That means that 1 in 3 women vets in the VA system report having experienced MST, military sexual trauma. 1 in 3. Think about like a group of your 3 closest girlfriends. Chances are one of them has a story of sexual trauma from their time serving. And MST isn't just a bad memory. It's not just a thing that you forget and recover from. It's something that can actually lead to PTSD, depression, anxiety, substance abuse. It's basically a domino effect on mental health. And so many women, and like I said, men go through this too, but they leave the service with these invisible wounds and experiences. And then, they develop depression, anxiety, PTSD. There have been some studies that suggest that we have higher rates of these conditions than both male veterans and civilian women, due to the combination of service-related stressors and post-service challenges that we have to face. Just consider this, if you will. We're often juggling multiple roles: veteran, civilian, possibly motherhood or caregiver, often processing our own military experiences and traumas from the past as well. And then that's just a recipe for overwhelm. I thought transition to civilian life would just be like taking off like a weight off my shoulders, off my chest, relief, freedom. But instead, what happened and what it actually felt like was like I was carrying an invisible load. just one that no one else could see except for me. Here's the final stat that I want to give you, and it might surprise you. There are over 2 million women veterans in the United States as I speak. We make up about 11% of the veteran population, and that number keeps climbing. In the year 2000, we were just 4% of vets. But by 2040, it is projected that women will be around 18% of all US veterans. What that means is that we, female vets, are the fastest growing group in the veteran community. So this isn't a tiny niche issue. Even I, like I said, as a veteran, was shocked when I first saw some of those numbers. But they did help me make sense of one thing, which is that I wasn't alone in my struggles. Far from it. Knowing that so many of my sisters are in the same boat is part of what drives me to speak up, and it's a part of why I wanted to create this channel. I realize there's not a lot of YouTube content for female vets specifically. I want to talk about why things have gotten to this point though. Why is it happening? Why are women vets facing such a mental health crisis? Turns out that there's a bunch of reasons for that. The first thing is we have old systems. The veteran support system, the VA healthcare, and everything that supports it was originally designed decades ago when the force was overwhelmingly men, just male. And honestly, you can still feel that. If you walk into many VA hospitals, it's like stepping into a time machine. I've been a part of group therapy in rooms adorned with pictures of male soldiers from Vietnam. You can still find pamphlets about prostate health on the tables. And I mean, it's all great resources for the man, but it makes us, the women, feel a bit out of place. Some VA facilities have been criticized for being too male-centric. So, for example, not all clinics had women's health providers. So if you needed a gynecologist or maternity care, you were screwed. Not really. You were often sent outside. You would get referred outside of the VA. If you wanted a female mental health provider or a women-only support group, you might be out of luck though. So you're kind of screwed there. This is important because imagine trying to open up about like something as private as military sexual trauma, or even just the emotional toll of like a miscarriage, and the only support group is like you and 10 other dudes. That can be a little tough. Reports show that a lack of female providers or women-only counseling options has historically made women vets hesitant to seek VA mental health care. Hopefully that makes sense to you. I personally have been there, so that definitely makes sense to me. Beyond just services, it's also the vibe. I know women who don't use their VA benefits at all because they felt uncomfortable or even traumatized by the environment. And I discovered that only about 38% of women veterans use VA health services at all. I am one of them. That means the majority of women vets either have other health care or worse, they possibly go without rather than dealing with the VA because, well, for many reasons. Some think they're not eligible. Some find the system too much of a bureaucratic nightmare, which it is. And many just feel like it's not for them. It's not a place where they feel welcomed. And another barrier is real life. A lot of women leave the service and immediately jump into other roles. So like maybe motherhood, or being the primary caretaker for aging parents, or just having to hold down a job while readjusting to civilian life. taking time for yourself, like going to therapy, falls to the very bottom of the to-do list when you have to fulfill other more important roles, or what you perceive as more important roles. I don't have any children, but even without children, that it was challenging enough for me. I never had to go from airman to mom, but I have friends who did. And it's just a new kind of experience, a new kind of challenge. If they needed to go to an appointment and they didn't have childcare, well, guess what? They're probably canceling that appointment. I mean, I do that all the time, and I don't have kids. I cancel because I can't find a pet sitter, or I'm feeling too nauseous to drive, things like that. And it's just a real logistical hurdle. Many of my veteran girlfriends have said things like, I want counseling, but I just can't afford a babysitter every week, or I can't miss work for group therapy. These are everyday barriers that make getting help harder. Now, let's talk stigma. The military instills a mission first, self last mentality. It works when you're, serving. That's great in war, but it's not so great when you come home and you desperately need a therapist. In uniform, I was taught to push through pain. You got a cold, you still reported for duty. You're feeling sad, oh well, drink water, drive on. That conditioning doesn't disappear when you take off the uniform. You can't turn it off. I had, and sometimes still have, a really hard time admitting I need help. For a woman, there's an added layer. You don't want to be seen as weak because you're a woman. I'm still in a predominantly male workforce, right? That's one of the reasons that I work from home, but I'm in cybersecurity, and I know that there's a lot of industries are predominantly male. There's this unspoken pressure to be twice as tough to be seen as equal. That doesn't go away. So asking for mental health help can become very difficult. It's like confirming an awful stereotype, like, see, women can't handle it, or special treatment for her, of course, little princess. And it's true. It's not just a little voice in your head. It's there for a reason. The stigma silences a lot of women. We'd rather say, oh, I'm fine, with a fake smile than admit that you're not okay and risk judgment. So the result, well, we bottle it up until we're at a breaking point. Women vets also encounter some challenges men usually don't, which can amplify mental health issues. For instance, pregnancy and postpartum. If a woman vet has a baby, that postpartum period can be a mental health minefield. I had a close friend, also an Air Force vet, who developed severe depression after her daughter was born. Her PTSD and anxiety, which had been mild before, skyrocketed with all the hormonal and life changes. This isn't unusual. Research shows women veterans using VA maternity care are more likely than civilian moms to have mental health diagnosis like PTSD, which can increase the risk of things like postpartum depression or even suicidal ideation. The normal challenges of new motherhood plus the weight of past trauma, I can't even imagine, and it's probably what terrifies me the most and why I have not become a mom yet. And then there's also menopause. That can hit us hard too. The DAV, or the Disabled American Veterans, it's an organization, did a report and noted that midlife around menopause corresponds to the highest rates of suicide in U.S. women. Fluctuating hormones, maybe empty nest syndrome, unresolved trauma coming back, it can be a perfect storm. And then if you're a vet and you have PTSD, that makes it even worse, right? So just think about menopause when discussing veteran suicide. When have we ever heard that? Like menopause and female veteran suicide. Like, it just doesn't happen. It hasn't gotten enough attention until very, very recently. It's a lot of hurdles that apply specifically to women veterans. But the good news is that the awareness is growing. The VA, to its credit, has been making some changes. They're pretty slow, but they're there. They've opened more women's clinics with female providers for primary care and mental health. And every VA medical center now has a women veterans program manager to advocate for women vets. They even have maternity care coordinators to help pregnant veterans navigate care. And in terms of mental health, they set up a military sexual trauma program where each VA facility has a coordinator to connect survivors with care. I myself have relied on these programs. These are positive steps, and I've personally noticed improvements over the years because, like I said, I left the service back in 2013, so I'm not like a new vet or anything, but we've got a ways to go, and these programs need to be supported and expanded, not just exist on paper. It's one thing to have a women's clinic. It's another if it's understaffed or 3 hours away from the women who need it. Now, I do want to shift back to a personal note and tell you about the moment I realized I needed help. My breaking point, basically. Because all this talk of barriers and stats is important, but the heart of this is how it impacts real lives like mine. So through all of this, transitioning out, feeling invisible, grappling with whether to seek help, I was mostly running on autopilot. I had a job, I was in school on the GI Bill. I stayed busy, sometimes intentionally to keep my mind from wandering to dark places. And other times not so much. I was just kind of used to being, busy for the sake of being busy. I told myself, you're out now, other people have it worse, you're perfectly fine. Focus on all the resources you have and all the things going for you. That worked until it didn't. My breakdown or breakthrough, depending on how you want to see it, I started to experience panic attacks for the very first time. Not knowing that they were panic attacks. My heart would just start pounding like it was gonna bust out of my chest. I would start to sweat. It just felt like the walls were closing in and I hadn't even stepped through the door to where I'm trying to get to yet. It would happen right before class. It would happen right before work. It would happen at the grocery store. Next thing I know, I'd be sitting on the curb, hyperventilating. I'd have to pull over a lot, just trying to understand what would be happening to me. Am I having a heart attack? What is happening to my body? And I would just be paralyzed with a wave of panic, just paralyzed with fear. I would make it less and less to, appointments, to things I had to be at, like work, school. And it started to become very scary. At nights, I couldn't sleep anymore. I just kept thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? Why can I handle this? This isn't difficult. I had been in high pressure situations in the military. I did survival school, boot camp, just in regular stressful deployments. I had dealt with surprise drills at 3 a.m. I had been responsible for other people's lives. And here I was, utterly undone by just the smallest little things. I wish I could say that realization was gentle, but it hit me like a freight train. I was a vulnerable human who had been through some things that left marks. And those marks weren't going to fade on their own. And I finally came to terms with that. I just knew I had two choices: continue pretending and probably spiral further, or ask for help. So finally, and somewhat reluctantly, I chose the latter. And then soon enough, the day came for my first therapy session. Those early sessions, I learned so much. I learned that what I was feeling had names: panic attacks, anxiety, depression, PTSD. I learned that it wasn't just from one thing. It was a cumulative effect of years of high stress, and of course, some trauma. And of course, the abrupt change of leaving the structured military life. My therapist also gently pointed out that just because I wasn't a combat veteran or physically wounded, it didn't mean I hadn't been through a lot. Trauma is not a competition. Everyone's pain is valid. Soon, I also joined a women veteran support group at the VA. I started to become familiar with a lot of local nonprofit organizations. I met other women. It suddenly was not as intimidating or awkward anymore. It wasn't super touchy-feely, which was something that I just couldn't handle in other outside of like veteran support groups. I felt seen. I felt like I had a support group of peers who had very unique stories, but also at the same time very similar to mine. So I started to recognize my own symptoms, the feelings of isolation, the difficulty in adjusting, the stories of harassment and trauma. I started to see all these things in them that I also was experiencing. It was great to break the denial mask that I was wearing. I felt like I was a part of a sisterhood of survivors and fighters more than anything. So that gave me a lot of hope. I still go to therapy, though these days it might be once a month instead of every week. Oh, and I forgot to mention that I myself moved from Oklahoma to Texas after I separated the Air Force. And one of the reasons for that was that I knew the VA had a lot more, or veterans had access to a lot more programs, nonprofits. But when I moved here, I actually learned that Texas has the most female veterans than any other state. So I knew I had made the right decision. I'm very happy with how these past couple of years have worked out for me. I truly feel like they made all the difference in whether I was ready to give up versus not. I'm hoping that we are able to create a better system, a better world where future female veterans don't have to struggle as much or have the same obstacles that my generation has had to deal with and previous generations have had to deal with. There are many, many groups out there dedicated to women veterans' well-being. For instance, the DAV, which I mentioned earlier, the Disabled American Veterans, they've recently put out a comprehensive report on women vets and mental health, from high suicide rates to risk factors like MST. Supporting organizations like DAV or the Wounded Warrior Project or local nonprofits that provide therapy, housing, or job training for women is a direct way to make a difference. I have relied on every single one of those programs I just listed. It's the reason I have a job. It's the reason I'm here. So by boosting these resources, you help make sure women vets know about them and can access them. We are the fastest growing group of veterans, and we have double the PTSD rates of men. Being a woman in the military was one of the greatest honors of my life, but it came with challenges I didn't fully understand until I was on the other side of that experience. Women veterans have been fighting for their country. They shouldn't have to fight for recognition or basic support when they come home. And to my fellow women veterans watching, I see you. I am you. Your struggles don't make you weak. They make you human. It's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to get help. In fact, it's more than okay. It might save your life. You are worthy of the care and the kindness that you readily give to others. Please, if you're hurting, reach out to someone. You don't have to be a female vet for this, but if you're hurting, reach out to someone, a friend, a counselor, a crisis line. The Veterans Crisis Line is 988. Then you press 1, by the way. I have it saved in my phone, no shame. And there are people ready to walk with you through the darkness. Trust me on that. And everybody else, thank you so much for listening. Just by doing that, you're already part of the change. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you guys in the next one.